Welcome to On the Bubble podcast, episode 145. I'm your host, Subasa J. Ueda, and he's my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today, we're going to be returning to our How to Draft episodes. We're going to be doing How to Draft Aurora today. It's been a while since we've done our How to Draft episodes now, but I'm so glad that we're back to these types of episodes. I guess before we start, how's your weekend? How much Omens have you been drafting?
Yeah, I've been having a good week. It's felt really good to get back to limited, like you were saying. I did like 2 drafts on Friday. No, 2 drafts Saturday. Oh, and 2 drafts Friday and a draft on Monday. So I've been drafting a fair bit, paper reps. I haven't actually drafted on Runaways yet since there's been quite a few local paper drafts available to us. And yeah, been really enjoying the set and feel like I'm starting to get a good grasp on it. So we will be covering our How to Draft series like usual. And yeah, how about you? How many drafts are you in?
I've only done 3 drafts. I couldn't make the Friday one, so I've done the 2 on Saturday and 1 on Monday as well. And as you said, though, it's been kind of great that there's been a lot of interest to do paper drafts in our local scene.
Yeah, it's been very, very nice. I guess I'm like 9 drafts deep overall. I did those 5, and then I think I did 4 in Prague. Yeah, feeling pretty good about where I'm at overall with the set so far, and it feels like the heroes are all starting to click a little bit. I think there's quite a bit going on, and for all the heroes, the drafting is hard, but also the gameplay is fairly intricate, like lightning flow management and all these instant speed timing windows, and just kind of like a lot of branching decision paths. So I think that both the actual drafting and deck building part is pretty important, but the gameplay part is also really important. I think it's one of the more technical sets that we've had.
Yeah, I think I agree. We've been pretty lax, I think, for our drafts about like doing takebacks and just like making sure the games are kind of real. But I can kind of see if we played at like Nats level or at a PT level where if you make a mistake, I'm just not gonna let my opponent just pick it back up and retry that turn. So in those scenarios, I feel like there's going to be a lot of edge gain to be like, playing clean, making sure your line actually works the way you want it to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely like ways to get blown out in this format, often to do with like ping effects and stuff like this. But yeah, there's definitely ways that like your prevention isn't always the prevention that you want if they have a duality and it blows out the prevention, and then your blocks don't work anymore to cover up the on hit. It can be a pretty big swing.
I've also had like the sequencing things of like, oh, like I actually should have just like blocked with my card against a Scorpio instead of like trying to convert it into an embodiment. Small things like that where like, oh, if I just like block, it's like worth 2 points. Where if I like turn my flow into an embodiment attack with Scorpio, it's only worth like 1 because I lose a lightning flow. And like small decisions like that kind of add up very quickly in this format. So honestly, this is a great format for like skill expression.
Yeah, I think so. And there's a lot of like question marks about how your opponent's turn is going to unfold, I think, in all the heroes, but especially Aurora and Ziggy. And just sometimes it's like, oh, there's like a yellow path of same ends. Do I block this for 2? Blocking for 2 feels kind of bad, but they have more cards. They're going to keep sending stuff, and then they just like swing Scorpio and play some kind of instant, and you're just like, I wish I blocked that path of same ends for 2. But on the other hand, sometimes you block the path of same ends for 2, and then they, I don't know, Rift Breaker you or something, and then you wish you had blocks on the Rift Breaker. So there's like, yeah, it's very, very interesting, and I think there's a lot of tough decisions to be made.
Okay, I guess before we get into the weeds of it, let's do a Patreon shout out and then just get right into this episode.
So thank you to all of our patrons who get back to the show. We couldn't be doing what we're doing without you. If you want to check us out, we're at patreon.com/onthebobble. We have a few different tiers. The holiday bobble and crack bobble tiers just give a little back to the show and show your support. And the titanium bobble tier gets you subscribed to all the regular content that goes out. I have a Syndra guide in the works for Nationals. It should be posted in the next day or 2, which probably is before this episode goes up. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested. It should have an updated how to play guide and all of the matchup notes and everything like that. So that will be on Patreon. And there's also some coaching tiers available if you're interested in those as well. But yeah, thanks to everyone who gives back to the show. And thank you to all of our listeners who turn in and tune in and listen each week. We really appreciate just all the support that you give us. Also, if you're looking to buy singles from a Canadian retailer, I would check out invasioncnc.ca, and you can use code YLB5 for 5% off all your singles at checkout.
Awesome. Okay, then let's get right into it. It's been a while since we did a hard to draft episode, but we've always talked about how many cards in each hero kind of blocks for how much, at least at the common and the rares. So we'll talk about specifically Aurora cards first, which are the Rune Blades and the Lightning Rune Blades cards. I just kind of grouped them together. So there's 15 rares, which 9 of them blocks for 3 and 6 of them blocks for 2. But one playset of them, or like 3 copies of them, are Stinging Sprites, which is the one that when it blocks, it does 1 arcane damage, so it essentially generates 3 value on block. And there's 24 commons, which 18 of them blocks for 3 and 6 of them blocks for 2. Which means that the Aurora class cards, it blocks quite well, even though it's like the Rune Blade class, which typically, has a lot of 2 blocks.
Yeah, I think that like one of the takeaways I have is that blue block 3s in Aurora don't feel that hard to come by. Not to say that you don't need to draft blues at a reasonable rate like you usually would, but just you can get your blue block 3s pretty reasonably in Aurora. I don't think you need to like overvalue them. I think one of my first drafts, I like overvalue blue block 3s a little bit, and I think the often prioritizing the reds is a little bit more important, and you'll usually get the blues if Aurora is open.
Because like how the heroes break down in this format, your cards blocking for 3 doesn't actually matter every game, right? Like for example, like Acilio doesn't do that much physical, so like having 3 blocks don't actually, impact your game that much. And then against Ziggy, you kind of just want like 1 3 block in your hand every hand. So like you actually don't need like a plethora of 3 blocks in your hand every turn to be able to block out their fragment cards.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You're doing like a bit of blocking, one to 2 cards. I think the 3 blocks are the most important in the mirror, but yeah, I think that not all your cards have to necessarily block 3, and there are some cards that don't block as much that are still valuable as well.
And also we're going to talk about the Lightning and the generics together. So there's 3 rare generics, and they all block for 0, except for Ominous Respite, I guess, which is the gain 2 for 1 mana, or if an Aura has popped, then it gains 3. It has 12 Lightning rares, which 10 of them block for 2, and 2 of them block for 0. So the Lightning and generic rares really don't block. They really have no block value. Except the commons block a little bit better. So there's 6 common generics, which 3 of them are the 3 blocks, which is the 0 for 4 opt 1 attack. And then there's 3 brush offs, like the 3 different colors of them. So maybe we'll talk about brush off separately later in the episode. They kind of block, they kind of don't. It's kind of weird in the sense. And there's 42 lightning commons, so there's a bunch of lightning commons in the set. There's the 3 D-Reacts, the Flittering Force Field. We have 9 3 blocks and 9 2 blocks, and then 21 of them is a 0 or no block. So half of the lightning cards, like rares, commons together, they basically don't block at all.
So often you are relying on the class cards to be your block 3s, and the lightning cards will typically not have very high block value out of a few exceptions. It is okay to have some number of no blocks in your deck. I think that is like pretty normal in this format, and maybe even desirable because those cards often help you convert your hands. However, I think at a certain point, if you have too many no blocks, it can become quite punishing into Ziggy or Aurora as well, because you start running into spots where you would like to be able to block more, and your options are either very limited or your hand just like doesn't really block at all. So having a few of these is fine, and I would say if you start getting up to the like 4 or 5 no blocks in your blue base, it can start to get pretty painful.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I've been having a couple of games where I will draw up my last 4 cards and I see 3 of them be no blocks, and I'm just like, oh, this is like just not good. I'm just dead here on the spot. And a lot of these games can come down to close to fatigue, and that really matters, right? Like Ziggy attacks you for like 5 at the end of the game, and you're looking at like no block, no block, no block, and you're just like, well, I lose is not a spot you want to be in.
Yeah, yeah. I've also just had hands where I have a blocking card, but I have three no blocks, and it's like I don't know. It's like I have a pitch card, and I have some stuff that like busts my attack, but my attack is the only blocking card, and it's like, well, technically this hand can block, but if it blocks, it doesn't do anything. So yeah, even sometimes if you have blocking cards, often the no blocks require cards that do block to do things.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, the hand of like Sigil of Lightning, Thunderous Retort, Storm Shard, and attack is like, you basically do no blocks.
Yeah, yeah. It's like technically you're allowed to block, but then your hand just like doesn't convert in a reasonable way.
So yeah, having too many of these no blocks or these generics can be quite a big issue. And cards blocking for 2 is kind of real, right? Like it having a 2 block value, it actually does cover up like quite a bit of stuff, and it converting for 2 is actually kind of reasonable in this set. Um I guess we'll talk about it here, but what's your take? Do you think this format converts pretty well, like 3 per card or like 3.5 per card, like in some of the other limited sets from before? Or do you think it's closer to like 3 points per card or less?
I think it's closer to 3 points per card, and sometimes even less if you're dealing arcane damage. I think a lot of this set is balanced around either awkward breakpoints. Aurora has lots of these, like fours with on hits, and also arcane damage being. You can interact with it better than a lot of sets, but it always effectively takes some kind of cardboard from you, whether that's a card that made a flow or an equipment or a prevention effect. It requires something to interact with it, and your usual cards don't block. And I would say that basically all of the prevention effects are less efficient than just like blocking with a card. So arcane damage is like a little bit underrated, but I guess the reward is that it's hard to block and hard to interact with, and then the attack damage is largely at like awkward breakpoints, or you get on hits, or in the case of Ziggy, maybe you get bonuses if they block you. So there's lots of like hidden ways to get value, but I think that often you are doing like 2 card sixes, 3 card nines, and honestly, when you're getting 3 points per card, it usually feels pretty good in this format, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think if you can convert your hand for like, 2 card 6, 3 card 9, I feel like that's the line you want to at least hit, right? Like as long as you're doing that every turn, you're doing pretty well in this format. You kind of like punish the people with the no blocks in their hand, or like the 2 blocks in their hand that they have to block with. Essentially, getting the value of your on hits is worth so much in this format because making lightning flow is kind of worth like 1 point essentially. Yeah, just incremental value through these, and forcing your opponent to like kind of block inefficiently is kind of the way you generate value more than like presenting 3 card 11s or 4 card 13s, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm starting to go up on lightning flows. Like they're good. I always thought they were good, but I think they might even be. I think like 1 point is kind of the floor, and I think in practice they're probably worth like 1.5 to 2. I think they might be worth closer to 2 than they are to 1. Whether that's like getting a good opportunity to activate your hero ability or allowing you to stop an on hit, and a lot of the on hits are worth 1, whether that's like destroy a flow or make a flow or gain a life, or but many of these on hits are effectively worth at least 1. So yeah, these flows are often worth 1 at a minimum, and I think very often the kind of like 1.5 to 2.
I think it also depends on which hero you are too, right? For example, like Acilio, I feel like it's kind of harder to convert these lightning flow tokens, but someone like Aurora really gets to convert kind of every single point of flow against everyone. Whereas like Acilio's hero text is like kind of a little bit harder to make sure you can turn on essentially.
I guess so. I find Cilia's hero text not too bad, but you don't always necessarily want to ponder, I think, is the bigger tension.
That makes sense. Then let's move on and talk about the Aurora equipments that we have access to. This is going to be kind of similar for every episode, so we'll talk about it in depth this episode, and then maybe a little bit less in the next episode. So let's talk about Aurora's kind of specialization equipment first, Snap Fingers. I've been kind of impressed with this card. It's not like super flashy, but it definitely kind of does everything that you want it to do. It blocks for 0 and has the ability instant pay a resource, destroy it, and target lightning attack action card you control in the active chain link deals 1 arcane damage to the defending hero. What this basically does is it allows you to trigger the on hit abilities of some of your quick strike cards. I say some because you have to read the card and be very specific here. The 0 cost cards that read when this hits a hero, this will not trigger. But the cards that read the first time this deals damage to a hero, create something, those will work. For example, Singeing Flow Stride will trigger and make a lightning flow for one resource and an equipment, which is kind of worth like 2 points of value. So you kind of want to pair it with things like Singeing Flow Stride, Stunning, Swipe, the yellow rare quick strike cards. Other than that, this card just gets to convert your floating resource for 1 point if you kind of have the resource floating essentially. I feel like Snapfingers kind of converts really well in Aurora.
Yeah, I agree. I also think the threat of activation of this card is really high, where just having it on the board complicates your opponent's blocks because you're doing lots of like 1 and 4s, and you might be sitting there looking at their Singeing Flow Stride and go, okay, I can spend a lightning flow, I can block 3, and I can use an equipment to prevent 1. But then if they also see that and then use the gloves to deal 1 arcane, and maybe you don't have an extra flow to deal with that 1 arcane from the snap fingers, you are in a tough spot, right? And so there's this question of like, are they going to activate snap fingers? Sometimes that means pitching an extra card, but maybe they wanted to pitch an extra card because they have a 2 cost, or just all these types of things come into play, and it being on the board can make these blocks really, really awkward. So I think that in addition to converting for 1 or 2 points, like you were saying, it also just like when my opponent has snap fingers, the game is so much more challenging on defense than when they don't.
That's a good point. Do you think this is like best in slot arm piece for Aurora, or would you be happy with any of the other arm pieces?
I think it's the best in slot. I think it is one of the better equipments. The gloves in general for equipments are the most. There are more gloves in the packs than other cards. There are also like more types of gloves because of the class equipment, but you will see more glove pieces than you will see any of the other slots. So it is the most common slot. I think that ideally you want to try and get snap fingers, but I'm not upset if I get, especially Astral Sanctuary, the tap prevent one. I think that is probably the next best option in Aurora, and I don't think it is that much worse than snap fingers.
Okay, yeah, I think I agree with you. I'm just gonna snap up either Astral Sanctuary, the glove piece, or the snap fingers, and just be happy with either or that I get first.
Yeah, I think that's true. And then Seekers, I think, is a little bit worse, but if you get late enough, you can pick up Seekers gloves. I think Seekers gloves are kind of a lower pick for Aurora just because you see more gloves, and I think Seekers is by far the weakest, but you can pair it with a 2 cost equipment or with Aurora's hero ability. So it's not like you don't have uses for it. It's still good, but I think overall a little bit harder to use.
Okay, I think I'm a little bit higher on equipment than that. I would just pick it up if I see it, because I've been having a lot of drafts where I end up with 2 equipment pieces recently, and I think I would just be happy having 3 pieces of equipment. So if I see Seeker's Mitts early, I might just pick it up just to make sure that I have an arm piece. And once I do pick it up, I don't know if I will pick up the snap fingers or the glove of Astral Sanctuary to replace it, because that does feel like a wasted pick, and maybe pick like a playable red or like a blue 3 block instead. I think that's kind of like where I'm starting to fall in these equipments, because like, man, it's so hard to get 3 or 4 pieces of equipments.
Yeah, I mostly agree. I'm generally picking equipment really, really highly and picking kind of the first piece of the slot that I see. But do you think I have shifted gloves down a little bit, especially Seeker's gloves? Because I think there's just better options in that slot, and you The I can't remember the exact breakdown. There just are significantly more gloves. The glove slot is the one you are the most likely to see more pieces of. So I think Seeker's gloves in particular, I'm much lower on. Whereas like Seeker's any of the other pieces, I will take it earlier.
Okay, that makes sense. Then let's talk about the sanctuary, the cycle of the sanctuary cards. So there's one piece of each. We already talked about it a little bit. But this card's ability is instant. You tap your hero and you destroy this card, and then you get to prevent the next one damage that'll be dealt to you this turn. So this can prevent arcane damage. This can prevent physical damage. It kind of prevents anything. This is just kind of like the best generic equipment that you can get in the set.
Yeah, I agree. Tapping your hero is a real cost, but you can usually find a few spots to do this where it's reasonable. I'm pretty happy with like 2 to 3 pieces of this, I would say.
Yeah, I think four might be overkill, but I wouldn't even be unhappy if I got four.
Yeah, I kind of feel similarly. I think I'd rather have like 2 or 3, and some other types of equipment, but four is not like it's not like don't draft your fourth. Just the fourth one gets a little bit harder to use, and there's a little bit of diminishing returns.
Yeah, but like it's still 1 point.
Yeah, it's still 1 point, and often that is like 2 points if you stop it on hit or something like this. Like a Scorpio is the most common one, but even like a Singeing Flow Stride, you deny the flow and the 1 damage.
I think the if you have multiple or like three or four of them, you'll be more like happy to use the first couple to just prevent one damage, and then the last couple you should probably use to stop like your on hits and the Scorpios, things like that. And just like be liberal with knowing that like if you keep your hero untapped for one turn cycle, that could be the reason why you lose your game.
Yeah, I think that's true. When you, especially as you have multiple and you're getting low on life and things like this, you want to just make sure that you're able to get value out of all your astral sanctuaries, and that depends on how many you have. So yeah, good point there.
The next cycle will be the Seeker's equipments. This is a reprint from Outsiders. This card's ability is instant. You pay one, you destroy this, you prevent the next one damage that'll be dealt to you this turn, and then you opt one. This card's good. It specifically in Aurora, it pairs so well with the hero ability that I kind of love this card.
Yeah, I think having a few seekers is really good. It also can pair with the 2 cost equipments, which we'll talk about next. But yeah, the 1 cost on your opponent's turn isn't actually that. It sounds like it should be really awkward, and I think there's a lot of formats where it would be, but I don't think this is one of them. There's just enough ways to make use of this, and having an onboard way is a big deal. So the seekers is quite good. I think it's a little weaker than the Astral Sanctuary, but like you said, I think I'm just kind of picking the one that I see, and you kind of wind up with what you wind up. The Seekers is not too much weaker. Also, really small thing, but the Opt 1 is on activation, not on prevention. There's a lot of effects in this format that, like, when you prevent the damage, you make a lightning flow, like Calm Veil Volthaven is like this, and there's a few other cards. But the Opt is actually on activation. So I'm not sure in how many spots this actually matters, but technically, if you were planning to do like this plus something else, you should probably opt one first, and maybe the information somehow affects your decision.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, the Seekers equipment was used in like the Ranger decks back in the day. That was just used for opt one on turn zero, right? Do you remember those days?
Yeah, you tried to like hit your Azalea arrow with the Seeker's equipment.
Yeah, good old days, good old days.
So yeah, a little bit of a different use case here, mostly for the damage prevention, but the op does matter. I think maybe a little less in Aurora than a hero like Acilio, where you're pondering, but it's still relevant. Still definitely relevant.
I think just being able to activate Aurora's ability with this is like really strong because like you essentially get to like pitch, let's say, Sigil of Lightning, a blue no block, and you get to block essentially for one using your equipment, and then you make a embodiment of lightning that you wanted to make anyways for the turn, and then convert your hand that way. I feel like in a lot of cases, if you don't need the extra resource, just cashing in your seeker's equipment in the spot where it's kind of natural for your hand to do so is probably one of the best times to activate your seeker's equipment. You don't ever want to be in a spot that activates the seeker's equipment and prevent one, just for the one value off of your whole card. You do want to make sure that you kind of like convert your resources efficiently. The worse you convert your resources, probably the worst you're gonna do in your games. So just be mindful about how you're gonna be using your other resources and not to just like let it go to waste as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And I think that turn zero converting this can also be pretty reasonable if you don't have other ways to convert your cards and you're taking arcane damage.
And one other way to spend these two resources will be the two cost equipments. These are the commons, and they consist of the tiara, which is a headpiece. There's the robes, and there's the lace lightning. So all of these guys have a very similar ability. It's instant. You pay two, you destroy it, and you prevent the next one damage that'll be dealt to you this turn. And then depending on which piece you have, it either makes a ponder token, a lightning flow token, or an embodiment of lightning token. Do you have a favorite?
I think the chest piece feels, which makes the lightning flow, is probably the best equipment in the set overall, in my opinion. It just feels really powerful. It's basically two resources for two value, maybe even slightly more if you value the lightning flow as more than one. And I've just found that to be like extremely strong. It also kind of like warps some of the turn zero stuff where like if your opponent is doing a small amount of arcane damage to you, like, and you just get to convert a card into that one prevention and lightning flow, and it's kind of free, and you get to start the game with two lightning flows. It's just like, it's so big. Honestly, it feels huge.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think Starflow Robes is the best of the bunch. And then I think it's Lace Lightning, right? The one that makes Embodiment of Lightning. It does depend on which hero you are playing, but in Aurora, it definitely feels like a free, like it's a free go again, which is really strong. And then I think Tiara is not a card I kind of care about. I don't really look at this ponder token as being that useful or easy to convert. And I think the biggest reason for the ponder token being hard to convert is that it needs to be on a turn, exactly on a turn where you will have no arsenal at the end of the cycle. You need to have two extra resources floating, and your opponent needs to be doing some kind of damage that you want it to prevent in some way, shape, or form. So all three of these things lining up, if they do line up, this card's immensely powerful. But man, it just never lines up.
You also have to ponder a card that you're willing to arsenal.
Oh my god, four things need to line up. Yeah, like
Like you can just like ponder some like blue block three, like I don't know, like the generic opt two, and you're like, do I arsenal this? Like I'm not sure. So yeah, I think often your equipment, especially the costed equipment, kind of help you convert when you otherwise can't convert that efficiently. Is a lot of the places where these come up, like to stop arcane that you don't really want to stop, and in these spots, it is hard to also make use of the ponder. Is like kind of what I found with the tiara.
yeah, I think it does have one of the biggest upsides, right? Because like the ponder token can be worth like 3, maybe even 4 points, but I haven't had that line up in that way ever. So, maybe it's like correctly costed in the sense of like when it does line up, it is one of the most powerful equipment pieces we have in the set, right? At common.
Mm-hmm.
But, when is it going to actually line up? Like, if it lines up at your finals of your nationals, like that's on you, you got me.
Yeah, I agree. I think the tiara is like overall not a piece I'm hoping to play. I also feel like you kind of want ideally only one of the two costs. Sometimes you don't get to be that choosy. I think if I had the chess piece and the boots, I wouldn't be like upset, but I would prefer to have like a single two cost and then some combination of class equipment, sanctuary, and seekers.
So that's all the equipments that we had for Aurora. Do you want to talk about the key cards for Aurora and like kind of how we get into Aurora as well?
So the first key card will be Electron Jolt Step. especially the red. Honestly, all the colors are pretty playable, but the red is the one to mention. This card is 1 for +3 on your next Runeblade or Lightning attack, and it makes a Lightning Flow, and it blocks for 3. This is basically a leg tap that blocks for 3, which is just great. Plus, it helps you with your flows, which can be meaningful damage prevention or activations of your hero ability. So in some ways, this is even better than a 1 for 4. This card's great, honestly. Like, I don't know if I'm like thrilled to pack one pick one this, but I would pack one pick one this card potentially.
Might be a little bit lower than you on that, but yeah, this card's good. I think this card's really good. You know the thing that I messed up our friend Phil on this. He taps my shoulder, shows me this card, and then asks me, "Does this card buff Scorpio?" And I answer, I look at the card, I read the card, and go, "Well, it buffs the next lightning attack. Scorpio is a lightning attack, so yeah, it does. It does buff Scorpio, but." The problem with Scorpio is that when you this is a non-attack action, so it does break the chain, and Scorpio requires a lightning attack on the chain to attack with it. So in reality, Jolt Step cannot buff Scorpio. There's like kind of like no way in this format that you'll ever be able to do it. But yeah, I kind of messed up his whole turn by just telling him, yeah, Jolt Step can buff Scorpio. But yeah, so in reality, you cannot buff Scorpio with Jolt Step, even though it reads that it can. It does. It is not possible in this set.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think that there is a way to make this work, but this card's very good. I quite like this card.
Yeah, the Lightning Flow generation feels so good on this card.
Think the only unconditional way to make lightning flows in the Runeblade pool, outside of the duality, I guess, but yeah, we'll talk about dualities. I think the dualities are good, but this is like an on-rate way to make a flow that doesn't require a hit, which is really strong.
I agree. I think the next card to talk about will be Path of the Same Ends. So Path of the Same Ends is the Lightning Runeblade attack action. Costs 0, attacks for 3, blocks for 2, and then it says when this attacks a hero, deal 1 arcane damage to them, and if damage is dealt this way, this gets go again. And it has the ability instant to pay a resource to this card gets go again. So this is just a 0 for 4 at red, and it's pay 1, give it go again, so it's a like tap. But if your opponent doesn't prevent their arcane, it's a 0 for 4 go again. Who designed this card? This card's gross.
Well, I love this card's design. I think it's sweet, but I do think it is very powerful. And when you're sitting against it, you have to sit there and be like, do I stop the arcane? Do they want to spend the resources anyways on like Aurora or a 2 cost or, some other cards? Or, am I, and like the prevention's like not that good, or is like the prevention actually like worth a significant amount here? And you kind of just, I don't know if there's like a great way to know. The one thing I will say about Path of Same Ends is to be aware that it is a great 1-card play, because if you allow it to have go again, they can follow up with Scorpio. So if they have no cards in hand, stopping the arcane is worth 3. And if they have 2 cards in hand, it is still very good, because it either ends their turn and forces them to arsenal the card, or forces them to convert the card for Scorpio. So I think those are the spots where you can be sure that stopping the arcane is good, and I think all the other spots are really hard to know.
There is a chance they have a blue and the 2-cost lightning attack, the Stellar Glide, that gets go again on its own, so you can get got.
No, this is why I'm saying if they have 0 or 1 card in hand.
Oh, one card.
0 okay, or 1 card. If they have more cards in hand, it's like impossible to know.
Okay, you're right. If they have 1 or less cards, yeah, preventing the one's probably good. I also like the yellow one of this card. I think the yellow being kind of like a 0 for 3, just a 0 for 3 essentially, that your opponent kind of has to block the arcane and the 2 physical coming, making them have to convert 1 card in hand on block to like prevent the damage or take 2 damage, I think is really powerful still. So I'll be happy with like a bunch of yellows of this card.
Yeah, I even think the blues are strong in the late game too. The twos, this is something that will come up a lot, but I think Aurora is the hero that can support the most drafters comfortably. Like if there are four Auroras in the pod, some of those Aurora decks are probably quite decent. And I think a lot of it is off the back of a lot of the yellows being super playable. And in particular, the yellows that deal arcane damage are really, really good because a lot of these decks actually want to block a little bit. And if you're kind of trading like 2, 3 card hands back and forth, and you're like, Pathos Amens, pitch a card to give it go again, Scorpio, activate Aurora, Arsenal. Your opponent's in this like really weird spot where they kind of want to block. If they're putting a 3 block in front of this yellow Pathos Amens, it's basically a red. And sometimes they even like don't put a card in front of it because they're like, oh, maybe they'll keep going wider, and then you just are like stuck in this spot where it's like, man, I really wish that I blocked. And that's really powerful. So you kind of have this idea of like reverse breakpoints where you're sending a 2, but because your opponent wants to block, you're actually kind of getting more value out of that 2 than you otherwise would. And I think Aurora does this a lot in this set.
And then you attack with Scorpio at the end, and they're looking at their 3 block and be like, "I guess this is worth 2. Give you a 3 block."
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes these like small amounts of chip damage are just actually really hard to stop and often earn blocks because they can't really afford to take 1 and 2 and then 2 and then not convert their hand. If you just lose 5 life, then don't convert your hand. You're in a tough spot. So yeah, I agree. The yellow is really good, and honestly, the blue in the end game has been really impressive too.
Then the next card is Storm Shard. This only comes in red, but it's a 1 cost lightning instant that says target lightning attack gets +3. It also has an additional cost or an optional cost, and it says you may destroy a lightning flow you control rather than the pay this card's resource cost. So this is a lightning press of the set, and man, even if it costs 1, this card's so good.
Yeah, we kind of talked about all the on hits, and it's often like the on damage effects, and then there's like awkward breakpoints, there's arcane damage, and if your opponent goes through all the hoops to stop all of that, and then you storm shard them, it just feels so bad. Like it's like often such a blowout. This also turns on Flittering Spike and Volatile Fluxer, which I think are cards Aurora doesn't typically want. But if you get a Storm Shard or 2 early, you can start drafting like a copy or 2 of these cards, and they're very powerful. And I think having the option to play those is pretty big. So I love Storm Shard. I think this is a very high pick if you are Ziggy or Aurora.
Yeah, I agree. I think this might be one of like the cards that I'm looking for when I'm drafting is Storm Shard. I just see a Storm Shard, I snap it off, and I'm like trying to go Ziggy or Aurora pretty early.
Yeah, I think this is one of the stronger commons in the set. It's a little awkward in Acilio because even if you have attack actions, I find you often don't have enough attack actions to warrant playing Storm Shard. But it is very good in the other 2 heroes.
You know what's also gross about this? You could use it on your Scorpio too, and get the extra point of arcane on hit. So your opponent uses like an equipment to like block it for 1, and you're like Storm Shard it 3 and 1 you, and be like, oh wow, this is a 0 for 4. If you use your flow or if you had a resource floating, it's a 1 for 4. You know, like super reasonable.
Yeah, I have made this play a whole bunch. Yeah, just the ability to push over on hits, I think, is the key. So yeah, speaking of on hits, let's talk about Singeing Flowstride. This is a Lightning Runeblade card, 1 for 4 at red, and it blocks for 3, and has Quick Strike, deal 1 arcane. So if it has Go Again, deals 1 arcane, and it always has on hit, make a lightning flow. I think all of the Quick Strike cards are good.
It's not on hit. It's the first time this card deals damage to a hero.
Yeah.
Very different.
It's true. I think that all the Quick Strike cards are good. We'll talk about all of them, but I think that this is by far the best one. We've talked about how good lightning flows are, and yeah, proactive ways or on rate ways to like do your game plan and make lightning flows are very good in this format. And I think that extends to all of the heroes. And so Singeing Flowstride, I think, is easily the best Quick Strike card. The red is fantastic, and honestly, even the yellows and blues are decent.
Yeah, I think the yellows are actually really good too, because like if we look at the rare Quick Strike cards that Aurora gets, this card is on the same rate as the yellow ones, except it doesn't get the +1 damage, and it makes a lightning flow, which is like better than all three of the on hits in my opinion. So like,
Oh,
do you think the I guess the embodiment's a little better?
I think the embodiment's really good.
Okay, but like compared to the other two, I think it's like I would rather have the lightning flow than a ponder or bottoming a card. So
Yeah. I mean, the Ponder one also does +1 damage, which I think is pretty significant.
yeah, but I'm just saying like, man, the yellow the I think yellow singeing flow strat is like really strong.
Yeah, I agree. It's still good. I think I might like the blue even more than the yellow, just because it's a blue, and we kind of talked about like the 2 and 1 being super annoying for your opponents. I think the arc. I think on these like non breakpoint cards, the arcane damage is really strong.
Really, I think it being three is relevant in this format because of how many two blocks exist. I
Okay.
think the yellow actually is a three, like something attacking for three is actually almost good enough in a lot of scenarios, mostly in the pitch stack.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I think it's okay. I do like it. I'll play all the colors, but I think for me it's red then blue then yellow.
Okay. I think for me it's red, yellow, then blue. The red's obviously like that card. The red variant of this card is just like it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. The red one feels great, and then the others are all right. And I think that those are probably the top three Runeblade commons: Electron Jolt Step, Path the Same Ends, Singeing Flow Stride. And I think that they are the best three by I don't know an okay amount. I think all of Aurora's cards are honestly pretty good, but those feel like the best three commons to me.
Yeah. Those three cards are probably like the reasons why you'll go into Aurora or like at least in at the common level.
So there are a whole bunch of other quick strike cards. They all kind of get bonuses when they have go again, of course, and then have some kind of on hit or on damage effect. Which ones of these do you like the most?
Well, I think we already talked about it. Dashing Flash Foot, making the embodiment of lightning kind of is worth two resources in a lot of cases, right?
And kind of a flow too, right?
Yeah. It kind of feels like you got and the tapping of your hero, so it's man, Dashing Flash Foot is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, the card is very, very powerful, I think.
Yeah, it is a rare, so you just don't see it that often. But when you do see it and you're already in Aurora, yeah, I just slammed this card.
After that, I like the ones that are true 0 for 4s. So Destructive Fleetfoot gets +1 and has on hit destroy an aura token. This one is quite good. And Russia Power gets +1 and on hit deal 1 arcane damage. I think Destructive Fleetfoot is usually a little bit better when they have auras to destroy. And Russia Power is just like always good because even if they don't have an aura to destroy, it's like a 0 for 5 when it has go again if it hits. And four is hard to stop. It always takes an equipment or multiple cards or something like this. You can't really comfortably cover 4 physical damage. Whereas like 3 and 1 arcane on stunning swipe, the one that taps the first time it deals damage, is a little bit easier to stop in my opinion.
And also, the on hit on stunning swipe is a little bit less impactful in my opinion. If they don't need the weapon or the hero tap for that turn, like they could kind of play around it quite a bit, mostly because they get to see the stunning swipe early in the turn most of the time. But I think my favorite's Destructive Fleetfoot. I think the best way to kind of frame this would be if your opponent has no tokens on board, they have zero flows. If they have zero flows, I think you're pretty happy. So like when Destructive Fleetfoot is active, they have flows on board, and you want to destroy flows. So I think Destructive Fleetfoot's my favorite more than Rush of Power actually, because I think Rush of Power is like overall good card, but when Destructive Fleetfoot is good, it and they have like one flow left, and you attack them for four, they're looking at you, and you're just like, ha, I can't even turn this card into a ponder. I can't even turn this card into an embodiment of lightning because Destructive Fleetfoot still destroys that. And then I guess Ziggy can flicker things, but yeah, like Ziggy gets to play around Destructive Fleetfoot a little bit better than the other two, but the other two really has no options if they can't block this out.
Yeah, that's fair. I've been pretty impressed with both of these. I guess if I had to choose, I would probably choose Destructive Fleetfoot, but they feel fairly close to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
draft what you can get though.
Yeah, honestly, all of the red quick strike cards are pretty good. I will say that Rush of Power and Destructive Fleetfoot get much worse at yellow, and I think that Stunning Swipe yellow and blue are actually pretty decent because of we get back to that like 2 and 1 arcane, and I think having lots of ping effects in your resource base can just make the end game like a huge nightmare for your opponent. So yeah, kind of interesting that I think the best yellows are the ones that deal arcane, and then but these red breakpoint on hit cards are quite strong.
Okay, do you want to move on?
Yeah. So I guess rounding out the Runeblade cards, let's talk about Voltbound Duality. What do you think of the duality in Aurora?
I'm kind of getting lower and lower on these dualities. They're harder to convert than I initially thought.
Hmm.
It's kind of nice that they're 3 blocks, so like I love the blue ones,
Yeah.
but the red ones kind of feel not great at this point. I feel like if I because this is essentially a chain ender, they are almost always replacing a Scorpio attack, and a Scorpio attack is kind of worth like in my mind they're worth about 2 points. So Voltbound Duality replacing that is kind of only worth two. So I'd always want to either use its ability or block with it. And I think using its ability is not always free. So it's like this. I'm at this like at this point where if I think I need the lightning flow generation, I'd want them, and if I don't want the lightning flow generation, I kind of want other things. So I'm like kind of lower and lower on Voltbound Duality the more I draft.
Yeah. I think it's probably the weakest in Aurora out of all the classes, the dualities. But I think having a few, either in your blues and maybe a red, is fairly valuable, especially for the Cilia matchup, helping you convert. But I agree that it's not. I think there are other Runeblade cards that are better. So Voltbound Duality is solid playable, but I don't think it's like a reason to be Aurora.
Yeah, I think if I had six, I'll be pretty unhappy. But I would want 2 to 3, kind of thing. Like, you know where I'm at?
Yeah, yeah, I think I agree. I think 2 to 3 is usually kind of where I wind up as well. And the finishing them on their turn is real and does come up sometimes. So
Yeah, have 2 to 3 volt boundarality yellow blues. Pitch them, pitch them, pitch them. Draw them in your pitch deck. Pitch a blue, 3 them. Oh, so gross.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And then finally, I think the biggest thing about Aurora is just having good red attacks. So the quick strike cards are all good, but also red lightning attacks fit pretty nicely into Aurora. Do you have any favorites?
I think Flittering Spike is one of my favorites so far. If you have enough instance to pair it with, the card is just a 1 for 6. On hit make a lightning flow, so it's like essentially a 1 for 7 if you have a lightning to play it. For example, if you have enough storm shards to back it up, or we'll talk about this, but thunderous retort, for example, if you have like a thunderous retort and a fluttering spike, you're just like attack you with my last resource of fluttering spike. They either have to block it for 6 or block it for 4, and you pump it by 2, you get another flow, and you end up with a thunderous retort on board, or you feel like unlosable in that spot.
Yeah, and I found giving this card Go Again to also be really nasty, where it's sort of like, even if you don't pump it, a 1 for 4 on hit make a flow is pretty good, especially for a 3 block. And you always have the threat of pumping it. And sometimes they block 6 on this, and then you're just like, okay, I didn't have an instant, but my follow up is like Rift Breaker, Astral Assault, which I think are also solid attacks. Rift Breaker is the 2 for 6 rare on hit destroy a lightning flow, and Astral Assault is a 2 for 5. You can destroy a flow to give this +2. I think having a couple 2 costs in your deck is solid and like actively good. And yeah, the Flittering Spike Go Again into a 2 cost is, or like potential 2 cost. You don't know if it's a 2 cost or if it's a Storm Shard into a Scorpio. And yeah, putting your opponent in that spot is really tough.
What's also gross is like, even if let's say you have a storm shard with the scenario you just said with Flurry Spark with Go Again, you don't actually have to use your storm shard there. You could like, let them overblock and then like get more pure damage on the next attack. Oh, so many gross spots.
Yeah, it's a really tough card to block against. I think Flittering Spike is really strong. Honestly, all the colors are good, but red is red is particularly good. And I guess on the same note, Heaven's Claw is also pretty good at red. Just 1 for 5, block 3, classic card. Very solid.
Yeah, yeah. I think just being able to activate Aurora, pitch a blue, attack with Heaven's Claw with Go again, and then attack with Scorpio, being essentially a 2 card 7 is very reasonable in this format.
Yeah, I agree. And then I also think the rare cycle that makes a lightning flow on hit and can be pumped twice are all like easy pack one, pick ones in most scenarios, in my opinion.
Yeah, they just go in every deck.
Yeah, they're just so good. I think the 0 for 4 is probably the best because it is the most flexible, but they are all very, very good.
Yeah, you can make all of them work.
What do you think about Electrolyze and Aurora?
I like one. I like one red, maybe two. Like it's fine. Like they kind of work. The more blues you have, like you kind of need to use a resource, and it being a free go again is real. It helps you convert against Cecilio. It's a breakpoint against Ziggy. Like it's a good card, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good card. I think the 0 block is real on a costed red card if you don't have a good way to use the resources. But in Aurora, because you have Scorpio, you always kind of have the floor of like, even if you draw this in an all red hand, you send Electrolyze into Scorpio and you do a 2 card 6, and that's actually just fine. So I think that red Electrolyze is the least punishing in Aurora, is what I would say.
Yeah, I wouldn't play the yellow or the blue.
Yeah, I would try not to play the yellow or the blue. I agree.
Yeah, and kind of like I would pick up one if I need it or want it. It's probably not a high pick though.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with all of that. I guess so these are kind of the key cards in Aurora. I think the red attacks are really kind of like what make you want to be Aurora. The other piece that we haven't talked about are there's some go again enablers. In particular, quick succession stands out. I think the yellow is especially good. The basically the red quick succession gives your next attack go again, and your next 3 attacks with go again get +1, and the yellow is your next 2 attacks, and the blue is the next 1 attack. The yellow getting +2 and go again out of this is actually pretty doable, I've found. And the blue is a blue that gives +1 and go again, which is just great. And I found this to be a pretty desirable card in the deck. And it's part of the reason that Electrolyze and Path of Same Ends is so good, is that these are easy ways to turn on yellow quick succession.
Okay, that's a good point too. I think my favorite definitely is the blue quick succession, just because like it's a pitch card and it kind of feels more flexible. But yeah, I think yellow is pretty easy to turn on as well. The red one is I'm not a fan of the red one right now. It gives the go again, but man, it's so hard to give more than +1, and giving it +2 already feels like you've done something, and you're never gonna get the 3, right?
Yeah, I think it is the worst color by far, but I still think it is a pretty decent card.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. It just feels kind of bad that you can't ever pitch it, so I like the yellow the best.
There's also Mercurial Skies. These are the ones that give your attack on hit. You can destroy a flow and on damage, you can destroy a flow and deal 3, 2, or 1 damage, depending on if it's red, yellow, or blue. I think this card is just okay. I think quick succession is basically always better. And you can play it. It's still a block 2 go again enabler. And I think you want some of these go again enablers actively in your deck. I think if you don't have any of these, you'll have a hard time. But Mercurial Skies is on the weaker side.
I'm actually kind of like I would probably never draft this card anymore. I'll be happier with playing like something like a Sigil of Lightning or like Thunderous Retort before I play Mercurial Skies at this point. The value of the lightning flow is, as you said, it's like kind of worth more than 1. If you play red Mercurial Skies, you get a little bit more than 1. Obviously, it's like you get 3 instead of, let's say, 1.5. But you've kind of used a card to give your card go again and maybe worth 1.5 if your opponent lets it hit. And I guess so the red one might be playable, or like it's probably the best one by far. But like the yellow and the blue feels like you actually don't get anything other than the go again. And if I'm doing that, I'm kind of okay with playing something like, I'll be happier playing a card that's like Sigil of Lightning, Thunderous Retort, kind of like anything else that has a little bit more text than that.
That's fair. To me, they're pretty close. I think that there's like different trade-offs. Sigil of Lightning, Thunderous Retort, turn on Flittering Spike, and if you have Flittering Spikes in your deck, they're probably a little bit better. But Mercurial Skies does block too, and I think blocking for two is not nothing. But to me, Mercurial Skies is basically just go again. Like I think blue Mercurial Skies and Sigil of Lightning are very close, and Sigil of Lightning is basically like you get instant synergy, and Mercurial Skies upside is you block for two, which is quite relevant against like Ziggy, for example. But I think I agree that the activated ability is kind of whatever.
Okay, okay, that's pretty fair. I think yellow's Thunderous Retort kind of like just like shoots way higher in my pick value, just as like both a sideboard card and an enabler. That I think I'm just like ending up like picking up the Thunderous Retort, looking at my picks and be like, oh, I already have two yellow Thunderous Retort. I don't need this Mercurial Skies anymore. It's kind of like where I end up being, and then I'll be like, I'll pick up a different two block instead, or like hopefully like some yellow three block.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not a high pick, but it can give go again. And then we've talked about Thunderous Retort quite a bit. I think the upside of just being able to AB in addition to being a go again source and an instant for your instant matters cards is just really powerful. It's a good turn zero play on either side of the turn cycle, and it helps you convert against Acilio. Yeah, Thunderous Retort, really strong. And Sigil of Lightning, Starlight Road are also decent as embodiment givers that are instants. I don't know if you're like hoping to play these, but having like one or two of these is totally fine.
Yeah, I think Thunderous Retort just being a reasonable mainboardable card and just really strong into Acilio kind of like gives it the edge of it. Like I'd rather just have like three Thunderous Retort yellows than a Starlight Road or a Sigil of Lightning. I think the yellow Thunderous Retort's my favorite color. Would Do you like the other colors of this card?
I like the blue quite a bit because it's a blue, and then I think the red is the least flexible. Having to AB3 specifically is like a pretty real cost. Like it's not like you can AB one, two, or three. You have to AB3, and you don't always necessarily want to like play it and pitch a blue.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I think my favorite's a yellow one because of kind of the same reasons. In my opinion, I think Aurora doesn't actually require three pitch a lot of the times to make their turns work. I like the yellow Thunderous Retort because then I can like pitch it if I need to pitch it, play it against Acilio, and then pitch another yellow or a blue to AB2 to like kind of pad your life total. And it feels like an embodiment of lightning because that's kind of what this card is.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I value blues a little bit higher, so I like the blue one. But yeah, I do think the yellow is also playable.
Then how do we get into the Aurora seat? We talked about a lot about the Aurora cards so far, but how do we actually get in, or like what are the cards that are pushing you into this deck?
I think most commonly it's those top commons that we talked about: Electron Jolt Step, Path of Amens, Singeing Flow Stride, and kind of Storm Shard. Storm Shard leads me Ziggy or Aurora, but it's usually those. Um, so at some point in the draft, I will start picking these because they seem like the strongest card in the pack, and that will usually be how I wind up Aurora. Sometimes this is pretty early. Like I think you can just draft Aurora early and stick Aurora and get a good deck. And other times, I think you can stay more open, draft some strong lightning attacks, and often when you're drafting strong lightning attacks, you're kind of effectively hedging Ziggy or Aurora, and then you can wind up in Aurora if you start seeing some good Runeblade cards.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Are you like first picking cards like let's say Fluttering Spike, or are you more looking at like the rares that have the instant and on hit make a lightning flows?
The rares are pretty easy pack one pick ones. Flittering Spike, I haven't quite decided. I think I like equipment a little bit more than Red Flittering Spike, but Flittering Spike is up there for me. And I have had a lot of drafts lately where I'm just drafting equipment and lightning reds. And then kind of pick a strong class card or two here and there when I see it, and then wind up in a deck. I have stayed open till I have stayed open till pack two and had reasonable drafts. I don't think you always want to do this. You can really sacrifice too much card quality a lot of the time. But I think you can stay open for quite a few picks. I think like till pick 5 or 6 is pretty doable without giving up too much.
Okay, yeah. I think I'm like kind of slowly going towards where you're going, where I think equipment like picking up equipment just keeps you open so much so that it makes your draft a little bit easier to navigate later.
Yeah, I also think that like the class breakdown is like a little bit more unpredictable in this because there's like 6 or 7 class cards and you can have like 4-2-1 splits. So often it is really hard to signal or understand what signals are being sent to you until you're a little bit deeper into the pack. So I think having some flexibility there is really good. I also think with the equipments, kind of like doing the math, there's equipment in every pack exactly one. So there's 24 equipments, but there's 8 players and 4 equipment slots. So that's 32 equipments, assuming nobody picks multiples, which means you get about 3-ish on average. But that also means if you aggressively pick equipment, like you can get 4, and then that's like someone else getting 2. And the difference between 2 and 4 equipment is like really, really big. So I think you need to pick equipment pretty highly in order to get it. And it's weird where like I've had pods where this isn't true, but I think that it is stronger to pick equipment early because you guarantee that you get it and you don't just like randomly become one of the people that has 2 equipment. And as more people do this, you also have to start doing it or you get very punished. So I think picking equipment highly is the dominant strategy.
Okay, okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yesterday's draft, I opened an arm piece, and then I opened an arm piece, and then I opened an arm piece, and ended up with 2 equipment. So
Yeah, sometimes this does happen. You just see the same slots over and over again, and there's not much you can do. But that's also like even all the more reason to draft equipment highly when you see it.
yeah, yeah. So don't RNG the arm piece too often, but I did end up with an Astral Sanctuary glove, so it was good. I lost that draft, but it was okay. Then let's talk about Acilio sideboard cards. We talked about Thunderous Retort already being a great sideboard card. Is there any other cards that you want to be thinking about picking up as Aurora for the Acilio matchup?
I think the next best one is Calm Veil of Volthaven Red. This is 2 resource instant, lightning instant, I guess. It prevents the next 3 damage that would be dealt. Notably, it doesn't care about the source, so it can cover up like multiple breakpoints and cards and ping effects. And when it prevents damage for the first time, you make a lightning flow. 2 for 4 defense doesn't sound great, but the lightning flow is very flexible and arcane damage is really hard to stop. Plus, you can sometimes spend this extra resource on, say, like a Seeker's equipment. So I think Convey Voltaven is just a very strong sideboard card in general and very good against Acilio.
Yeah. And as a context, like Acilio is like sometimes converting with Flashbolt, right? Which is a 2 for 3 arcane damage. Typically, he's going to use his hero ability, so it's going to be a 2 for 4. And Convale of Volthaven kind of cleanly covers that up for the same amount of cards. So you're not even like going down on cards by using this card, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think being able to arsenal this is also really strong because we kind of, we'll talk about it, but basically, like, you need to be able to convert your cards, and being able to arsenal it just means like you find a hand that doesn't convert, then you get to pitch into Convale Voltaven and you got to convert a card you otherwise wouldn't get to convert. And that's big.
Yes, yes. The next card on this list will be Spellbane Sigil. This card is the Arcane Barrier X card, where X is kind of any number you want. So, and at the beginning of your action phase, you destroy it. So it's essentially one of those sigils, but you get to kind of cover all of the arcane damage equal to the number of hits you currently have. And this card can be a blowout if your opponent was expecting to like do a big source of arcane, and that was kind of their whole game plan.
Yeah, it can be really strong turn 0 if they send a bunch of arcane. It's a decent arsenal to wait for a spot where it is strong. And I think often on your turn is a very strong place to play this, which sounds a little bit strange, but I've had it where I've had extra resources and I can play it out and stop like a cosmic flare or some, not a cosmic flare, a cosmic suture or something like this, and then get some value on their turn. I've also had it turn on Flittering Spike. You like chain under Flittering Spike and then you turn it on with this, and they kind of get to their turn and they're like, huh, you have ABX. Like, that's not good for me. So if you find a way to get value out of this on your turn and then also have AB on their turn, it feels very strong. And it just lives in your blue base. So you probably don't want to main deck this card, but very, very strong piece of hate against Acilio.
Yeah, it is a common, so it is reasonable to pick up.
And the last one is Star World Warning. It's a yellow instant, costs 1, and makes 2 lightning flows. Yeah, it's not bad. I think this card you often won't get because I think it's a pretty high pick in Acilio and Ziggy, but if you know your Aurora and you see this later in the pack, you could pick it up as sideboard.
And I think Star Wars Warning is super reasonable because you just get to play it whenever you have the floating resource, and you get 2 Spell Void essentially just on the board floating. This card's good.
Yeah, it's very solid. Also can enable your hero ability, which is important too.
Just enough for it to be good in the mirror in the Cilio matchup.
How many of these prevention effects are you like hoping to play into Acilio?
For me, I think if I have like 3 or 4 of them, I'll be pretty happy. Mostly like Yellow Thunderous Retort, a Calm Veil of Vote Haven, and yeah, if I had like 2 Thunderous Retort, a Calm Veil, and like either a Star Wars Warning or a Spellbane Sigil, I'll be very happy. I'll feel like I'm gonna be like pretty padded against Acilio, just enough to activate Scorpio enough to kill my opponent.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can go like higher if you have like multiple thunderous retorts because they're kind of on plan for you. But I think you can go overkill playing too many calm veils and Starworld warnings. Spellbane Sigil is kind of fine because it's a blue, so you can always just sideboard out a blue block 3 for Spellbane Sigil, and you're not really diluting your deck. But I have seen people go like too heavy in this like red and yellow calm veil and Starworld warning and maybe the discard prevent one make a flow if it prevents damage, playing like multiple of these cards, and they can sit there and they can prevent a decent amount of damage, but it's like usually not enough to realistically fatigue Acilio, and their offense is just like not there. So you kind of want a little bit to give yourself some buffer and some turn 0 potential, but I think you don't want to over index on these. Aurora is still an assertive deck, and I think that your best route to beating Acilio is by being aggressive.
Yeah, if you give them enough time, they just get to like keep sending these like yellow, blue, arcane damage spells, and you're just gonna get chipped down to death.
Yeah, like a lot of their yellows and blues can do like 3 arcane, and it adds up.
Yeah, 7 of those kill you.
Yeah. And you have some prevention effects, but like a lot of your preventions aren't even 3. And then, yeah. So yeah, you can't give them too much time. And even if you are trying to lean into the fatigue strategy, I think a lot of your fatigue is going to come from hitting them and making them block because that takes cards out of deck. I don't think you can actually just like sit there and passively fatigue Acilio as Aurora.
Yeah, I don't think so. And even if you do, you don't even have a repeatable weapon. Like, how do you kill them?
Yeah. You have to be attacking them and trading up on cards, basically. All right. Overrated cards.
I already talked about this. My top overrated card is Mercurial Skies. I think this card gets picked too highly. I kind of just never see this in my drafts because I don't pick them and then other people pick them. And then other people play them and I'm just like, sweet. Like, I don't care about this on hit at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mercurial Skies is kind of whatever. Another overrated card is Live Wire Press. This is the 1 cost instant, and the attack gets when this hits, deal 4. There are enough instant speed ways to prevent damage that are huge blowouts with this card that I do not really want to be playing this card.
Yeah, like, imagine you get, like, the incidental brushed off. Like, there's RD reacts in the set with the flittering force fields. There's the Calm Veil of Volthaven that some people have to play in their main because, they have to. There's Glide Through the Starlight that prevents 1. There's the Seeker equipment. Yeah, there's just so many ways to prevent damage. There's Cosmic Suture and Auxilio. Ziggy has Infinite Ward. It's like if your opponent wants to, they can prevent this.
Yeah, I would say that it's an important card to be aware of because it does just kill people and it does just sometimes win games. So keep it in the back of your head, but I would hope to not have to play this card. I think if my deck was like just okay and had some instant synergy, there's probably like worse cards than this. Like I could see myself putting this in my deck in a certain situation, but I would hope to not have to, is kind of how I feel.
Do you know what this card does though? It does make your bad Aurora decks into a playable or into like a winnable Aurora deck. Like you just get your opponent once and you're just like, got them. Like they're dead.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of have stuff like, like flittering spikes and things like this. So yeah, it is definitely a card that can get people. It's not unplayable, but I think if I have a really good Aurora deck, I would hope to not have to play this card, is how I feel.
Yeah. You can kind of get blown out by your opponent if you play this, and you never want to be in that spot.
Another one I'm going to put on here, we didn't talk about it in the prevention cards, but Brush Off. I don't think people are necessarily that high on this card, but the more I play with this card, the more I feel like it is largely just a trap. You can maybe play it into a Cilio if you have a lot of lightning flows and prevention equipment, but you need to be able to protect it from the ping effects. Otherwise, it can just get like pinged off because it does care about it's like there's just the next it cares about like the source. So if they deal one with I don't know, a Constella card or whatever, a Starfall trigger or a duality, you just like eat your 3 prevention, and that's terrible for you. And if they're doing more than 3 damage, you have to be able to cover 3. So like you'll need like spell voids or other prevention to supplement it. And then Ziggy has fracture and usually big numbers, so you really don't want to play brush off there. And if Aurora has like all these ping effects and breakpoints and like the gloves make brush off a disaster. I feel like brush off is just like a liability. I would rather play like a textless yellow 2 block than this card.
Okay, maybe not that bad, but
No,
yeah.
no, no, no. Actually, like I think into like Ziggy and Aurora. Like I've played into Aurora before because I'm like, oh, but maybe it's just like a 3 block, and like my deck doesn't block that well. I just need a 3 block, and it's just like lost me the game consistently.
You know the color I kind of like better is the yellow brush off. It kind of like does usually prevents some point of damage with brush off yellow. Like you kind of don't care if they like play around it. You're just like you get the 2 value a lot of the times. Like it's kind of nice. It's a nice 30th card. It's fine. It's better than Bauble.
Yeah, yeah, it's better than Bobble.
It's better than Bauble. So
But I said yellow 2 block.
okay, you're right. You're right. Yellow 2 block might be better. Yeah.
Into Cilio, it has some applications. I think you can play the red one into a Cilio if you have enough flows and stuff to make it work, but it's on the weaker end of prevention effects there. And I think I see people play this card a little bit too often, is what I would say.
Yeah, I feel like it's more of the thing of like, oh, I don't have enough playables. I need to play brush off. But yeah, if you're picking this aggressively, I feel like you should maybe look at some other cards.
Yeah, yeah.
So underrated card next. My top card is Destructive Fleetfoot. I think this is like a mirror breaker at a lot of times where when you attack with it and your opponent has an embodiment of lightning, it just cracks it, and your opponent now has to somehow create or get 2 more resources to convert their lightning flow into another embodiment to make their turn work sometimes. And that can be a disaster for your opponent's hands. Sometimes I just like playing this as a chain ender in the Aurora mirror and as a 0 for 3, and your opponent just looks at their hand and be like, I have to block this or my turn doesn't work anymore. I feel like this card just comes around a little bit too often right now.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. In a similar vein, we have Rift Breaker. This is the 2 for 6 on hit, destroy a flow. Honestly, like the red one's great. The yellow is like surprisingly decent, and even the blue, a blue that has a breakpoint and an on hit is actually still pretty okay. Um, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I really like the 2 costs for the turns where like you have a go again enabler, and you get to go like 1 cost into 2 cost, especially singeing flow stride, where maybe they try to cover it up, deny you the flow, and then you rift breaker them, and it's just like, do I fold my whole hand if I'm even able to, and then like get closer to the fatigue end game, which I think is pretty real for Aurora if she keeps her opponents blocking, or do I just like take 5 and lose a flow, or take 6 and lose a flow, and that's like pretty powerful. I've been really impressed by Riftbreaker.
Yeah, same. I actually had a game on Saturday where I forced the stalemate with a yellow Riftbreaker at the end of the game. I'm playing against a Ziggy, and they have 1 flow left, and we're at like, I had like 2 cards or 3 cards left in my deck, and they had 3 or 4 cards left. A Riftbreaker, it leaks 1, and it breaks the flow. They don't have any more ways to make a flow, so they can't use Aphrodite anymore. So they don't have any way to deal damage to me, and my Riftbreaker was the last card that dealt damage. So we just stalemated because I attacked with the Riftbreaker instead of me losing. So there are spots like that where, you know, if Ziggy needs the last flow to do 2 damage to you, Riftbreaker breaks that. It's pretty kind of insane.
Yeah. I think Riftbreaker just the flow destruction is just like really strong, and the two costs are you don't want too many of them, but having a couple in your Aurora deck lets you kind of do some above rate things, which are not always easy to do. So I've really enjoyed Riftbreaker for that.
I think also the issue of fatiguing is a real issue in this format, where if you don't play any caustic cards, you can be in this spot where your opponent can just block you out and you kind of stalemate because you don't have enough damage. And if you play like one or two caustic cards, it kind of does flip the math. Like 1 2 for 6 or 1 3 for 7 can generate enough deck damage to fatigue your opponent first if it does come down to that, or if your opponent's plan was to fatigue you.
Yeah, I think that is true. And I think Aurora is pretty good at fighting on this deck damage axis. I think Ziggy is the most like game fatigue oriented hero, but Aurora in all of the matchups, you can wind up in these fatigue end states.
Mhm.
Okay, let's talk about the deck outline to round things out. So we have some different opinions on deck outline a little bit, especially in the resource space. I think you can play anywhere from 6 to 10 blues. I tend to prefer a little bit higher on the blues, like the 9 or 10 range. I think I value the one cost and the two costs a little bit higher. And I think if you're playing lots of one costs and two costs, you need a few more blues. But I know you like a little bit lower blue count and a little higher yellow count. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I think Aurora has this ability to play off of yellows quite a bit more than some of the other heroes. And I think in the late game, some of these like one costed yellows can go quite a long way, mostly because this format has a lot of two blocks. Talking about cards like Singeing Flow Stride yellows and like Path the Same Ends yellows, things like that. Like these premium yellows that are good on offense, good as resource cards. I feel like I just want a lot of these. And I kind of end up in a spot where I have like 6 blues and like 10 yellows. So I end up with like 16 resource cards where every hand I end up with like 2 yellows and 2 reds, or like a blue, a yellow, and 2 reds, things like that, right? I get to actually like convert my cards and I can attack with my yellows if I draw them, and if I don't draw them, I can pitch them for resources and make my turn work. I think the biggest downside with playing not many blues is that your turns that you want to go like pitch a blue, activate Aurora, attack with your one cost with Quick Strike, and then attack with Scorpio. That turn isn't become that's not a natural turn anymore. But if you have things like Destructive Fleetfoot or Rush of Power, you can go pitch a yellow, activate Aurora, Destructive Fleetfoot into Scorpio, and which is a very clean turn as well. I think there's just like a lot of different ways you can kind of like use your resources depending on which colors of resources you draw. And I think Aurora in particular gets to play yellows more freely than the other two heroes.
Yeah, I've been starting to feel like this set in general, you have a higher yellow count than usual. I also wind up with like 15 to 16 resource cards, but I think I bias a little bit more blue and a little bit less yellow. But I think you often wind up with some powerful yellows in all of the heroes. And I've been seeing a lot of like not exactly like 10 10 10 type setups from like Ziggy and Acilio, but close to that, and it's like pretty reasonable. So yeah, this set's very interesting. I think that there are yellows that are just good cards, like the rares that you mentioned, and sometimes cards like Path of Same Ends. There's just like certain commons that are still good at yellow, and I feel like you're also often a little bottlenecked on reds. Like you can only get so many, so you end up playing some yellows, and yeah, the yellows in this set seem a little bit more they'll be in your deck and they'll be okay than in a lot of other formats.
Yeah. There are some yellows I do like kind of try and stay away from, like volatile flexors, like or like fluttering force field. Don't play these yellows, like play the on rate yellows. Don't play the off rate yellows.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, or make sure they're 3 blocks.
Yeah, three. I was gonna say at least volatile flexor blocks three. Yellow fluttering force field though. That card is actually kind of real, I think, as a sideboard card against Ziggy. I think that the D react's really strong against Ziggy if they're trying to play Auric Shards or something like this, or even just like a Arsenal card that fractures is strong. So I've actually kind of liked the yellow Fluttering Force Field. Like I'm not picking it highly. Yeah, it's like you get it like 2 cards left in the pack, but like I have boarded it in and been pretty happy with it.
Okay, yeah, yeah. The red one's better though.
Red one's better. Red one's better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't get that part wrong. The red one's still better.
Okay, okay. Back to our deck outline. 6 to 10 blues, 5 to 9 yellows. You want about half your deck to be resource cards. From there, I think you kind of want like 3 to 5 go again sources, probably like quick succession, thunderous retort, maybe sigil of lightning, cards like this. Do you also like this?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's kind of hard to go wrong with like an extra quick succession because it blocks for two still. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think if you don't want to have like six thunderous retorts, I think you want some of these to be able to block for two.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I've tried drafting lower, like 2-ish. And even if you have a lot of lightning flows, always relying on your hero ability is like kind of awkward. I don't I don't like it. I think you get so much more flexibility to use flows for spell void and to like consistently have go again and consistently convert your hands if you have these go again cards.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think having I like having like 4 to 5. Like the more you have, the more flexible your hands get. And against the Cilio, you just need to make sure your hand converts. And then against Ziggy, like your two blocks just still block for four, which is fine.
Yeah, and these are pretty important for letting you like do like 2 go again attacks where like maybe one of them comes from Aurora's ability and one of them comes from one of these go again sources, and then those are some of your really really big turns, because we've talked a lot about like the go again attack into Scorpio, and that's pretty great when you're trading back and forth and chipping. But against a deck like Acilio where you want to kill them, if that's all you do, you're going to get burned out by their arcane damage first. They're happy to just trade 2 card hands with you over and over again, and you kind of need ways to go over the top. And I feel like the go again sources are the way to do that.
Next, you want as much flow generation as possible, and possibly on proactive cards. So, Singeing Flow Stride. That's kind of the number one way you want to create flows, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Jolt Step. You kind of want these cards that are like on plan, make flows, and I think more is better. I don't know. Maybe there is like if your deck is like only singeing flow strides, like maybe that's not good, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. So I just feel like having more proactive flow generation is basically always good. And then for your resource carve, I guess it depends a little bit on your blues and how your blue count, but you want a mix of zeros and ones primarily, with like a couple 2 costs, like somewhere in the range of like 1 to 3 2 cost attacks. I wouldn't go more than that. And I think generally you want more, the most zeros, somewhere in the middle of ones, and then the least of twos.
Yeah, and I think you kind of just like shift your resource base based off of how many 2 costs you get, how many 1 costs you get. So like the more 1 cost and 2 costs you have, the more blues you want to play. And if you have like 3 or 4 2 costs, you really want to have like 11 blues, right? Like you kind of just like shift the number of yellows that you have to blues if you have more 2 costs. And Aurora is pretty flexible in that sense of like you just increase the number of blues, lets you play these higher cost cards pretty nicely. Like it's not actually that bad to play a lot of costed cards.
I found that like it sounds like it should be more specific than this, but I think between the hero ability, the 1 cost cards and everything, like you and the go again sources, you just like have enough different ways to spend resources that it kind of works out, so long as I think you want the most zeros somewhere in the middle with ones and then not too many twos, but a couple twos is actively good. I think so long as you're somewhere in there, it doesn't matter like exactly the makeup of it. I think it's like you said, I think it's very flexible.
And it kind of like really shows how good you are at kind of keeping track of like how your resource curve looks like and how many blues you kind of want to like make sure you draft with it. And the lower costed cards you play, the more yellows you get to play. So just letting you know, like Path of the Same Ends is kind of insane.
Yeah, that card is great in all colors. All right. Let's get into some of the gameplay stuff. The first thing I want to talk about in general is flow management. I think we'll probably have to talk about this for all of the heroes. They're obviously really important for using your hero ability and enabling Quick Strike and Scorpio. So I think having a healthy amount of lightning flows is really, really good for any Aurora deck and honestly any deck in this format. But remember that these flows are also Spell Void 1. So using your hero ability kind of costs a life, which is usually fine because you at least get the Scorpio out of it. So you kind of get like two. So you're usually trading up, but just, occasionally be aware that giving up Spell Void could be really dangerous, maybe against like a Cilio or something like this. I think the biggest thing about using your flows and deciding if you're able to spell void one is knowing how much go again you have in your deck, and especially like natural go again, whether that's your quick successions or your electrolyzes or your path to amens, but also how many like of these quick strike cards you have that you think you're going to want to be able to resolve, and kind of managing that flow. Because I think if you spell void a bunch early and then bottom out on flow, then can't convert your quick strike cards, like you are going to lose that game.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And like it's also like important for your fatigue math about making sure you swing Scorpio. If you just never swing Scorpio, I think every deck in the format can fatigue you out. Mostly if they're attacking you, like Ziggy will definitely fatigue you if you never swing your Scorpio.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I think a good heuristic is to try and save your flows. So if it is just arcane damage and no hit effect, I don't think you should really be spell voiding unless you're pretty low, because I think all the heroes do enough arcane damage that you're going to get a chance later. So like maybe once I get to like the 5 or 6 range, I might start thinking about this. But like outside of that, I'm not really cashing in my flows for spell void unless I have a ton of it. If I'm against Aurora and I'm at like 8 and I have 6 flows, like yeah, maybe I'm starting to just cash it in for life points. But mostly you're wanting to block on hits or save it for your hero ability, and then you can usually cash it in later in the game. It's like sort of the way to go. I see people just like immediately cash it in because they want to stay higher, and it's sort of I don't think you have to do that. I think you give yourself less flexibility in general if you do that.
Yeah, but there is a balancing act, right? Like as you said, if you have so too many, you do want to cash it in. And even if you have like four, there are spots where I'm just like, I know I can make like three more lightning flows. Am I actually gonna be able to cash all of those in? You do need to like kind of make sure you convert all of them. Mostly when the game does get close, you're going to be in these spots where every point's gonna matter. And if you end up with two lightning flows at the end of the game and you lost your game, you kind of know where you missed your 1 point, right? Like you should have used the flow somewhere. But I do agree with you. Like preventing like the path the same ends paying with the lightning flows worth so much. Even preventing your opponents in the mirror, like the Sinjin's flow stride ping, you stop that, you block it out, and then you prevent your opponent from making a lightning flow. You kind of like generated one extra value off your flows. So that's kind of like the spots where you definitely want to be using your flows.
Yeah, save them for those spots. And like against Acilio, this is also the case. They have like Enyon Surge, where if it hits, they can tap their hero and make a lightning flow. And just like save it for those. They do lots of arcane to you. There's no reason to snap it off on, I don't know, just like a meteoric impact. Like sure it hurts, but like they're gonna be killing you with arcane. So as long as you're, maybe don't go to like 4 or something in case they have attack actions, but yeah, you can go pretty low and it's okay. And I think just be aware of it and monitor it, and you should be able to kind of like adjust to the right spot. But I would say that in general, I think I see people pop flows earlier than they should, rather than not pop flows and wind up with like too many at the end game. But just monitor and you'll know which one you're doing, and then you can kind of like adjust. And it will depend a little bit on your deck's flow generation and all of that as well. And yeah, I think if you're actively thinking about it, you'll start to get a feel for where the sweet spot is. But I think it's something to think about, because I see a lot of people play this format and kind of glaze past these decisions and just kind of do whatever. And I think that they're actually really important decisions.
Anything else you want to talk about flow management before we talk about specific matchup? Pretty generically.
Now, let's get into the matchups. So, Aurora, first or second? And does it depend on the matchup, or is there just like a general rule for Aurora?
I just go second. Like I can't imagine trying to go first into Cilio and try and race it back. I'm just gonna go second and put maximum pressure. And I think there's just enough cards in Aurora's card pool where you can actually activate cards going first and like enough ways to prevent damage against Cecilio going first. Or sorry, if they go first, that you still just want to go second. Like if you have like Thunderous Retorts, you have Calm Veils, like, if you just open that or like open Starward Warning on turn going second on turn one, like you really just bury your Orsilio opponents like that. So I think you just go second in every matchup.
Yeah, I agree. I also think Aurora doesn't have great ways to get ahead going first. And even though there are some cards that are reasonable going first, like Thunderous Retort is like pretty good going first, right? You get an action point. Those cards function just as well going second. Like all the cards that you have are instants that good on either side of the turn cycle. So there's not really a need to go. There's not really an advantage to going first. Whereas I think some of the other heroes you can argue. We'll talk about it when we get to the Ziggy and Acilio episodes. There's some advantages to going first sometimes. But for Aurora, yeah, I would just go second. And if you're playing against Aurora, I would just choose second. Deny her being able to go second.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's talk about specifically the Ziggy matchup. How do you approach this matchup?
I think the biggest key to this matchup is to try and avoid taking unnecessary damage and just trade with them. Try to utilize breakpoints, try to utilize Scorpio, and just hit them a bunch. The games will often tend towards fatigue. And I think just maximizing these things is really important because if you get too low, Aphrodite will just completely take over the late game once you are low. And so I think like from the Ziggy side, they're really finding ways to try and chunk you and, stuff like Auric shards is a big way to do this. And this is, I guess, if you have them, Flittering Force Field, very good against Ziggy to try and shut down some of these like big Auric shard turns. If you think they have an Auric shard in Arsenal, because usually it sits there for a bit, you Arsenal the D-React, the Auric shard, you block a card, and then they play the Auric shard, you D-React, and basically shut their turn down. It's often game winning. So yeah, I think just like make sure that you're getting value on the fragment cards blocking when you can and maximize Scorpio.
Yeah, I am nothing much for me to add there. Just swing Scorpio whenever you can, and if you can like keep a card in deck to swing Scorpio, do that. And the more times you do that, the less often you're actually gonna get fatigued by Ziggy. And I feel like that ends up if you like both players are playing pretty like tight and pretty efficiently, the game's gonna go to fatigue and it's gonna come down to how many times you swung Scorpio.
And from their side, I think it's how many times they swing Aphrodite. So yeah, I think just like pressuring them, all the breakpoints and taxing their flows makes it harder to swing the weapon. And you just want to do this as much as you can. And yeah, I think it's a close matchup. But yeah, I think the biggest way to go wrong is just like eating too many fragment cards early and just starting at a life deficit. And then the game gets really hard because you have to block and give them value on their fragments, and then can take damage. You can take a lot of arcane damage on both sides of the turn cycle, and it kind of snowballs away from you if that happens.
There's a card from Ziggy called Ebbing Arcstride. This is the one when it fragments, it gets go again. At red, attacks for 5. I would almost always block this. Just like if your hand has like 2 blocking cards, I would definitely block this card almost every time. Ziggy has so many instances that like a lot of the times they don't even need the go again, and if they do need the go again, you can just block the next card anyways. I think that just like if your opponent attacks with this card and you eat the 5 to try and like quote unquote break their turn, it often ends up you just like losing 5 life and you're now at a back foot because then your opponent can convert pretty well with like a Cosmic Space Dust,
Yeah.
and you can kind of be in a really bad spot.
Yeah, I agree. You'd have to have like a really strong turn to not want to block because you're basically getting +2 on all of your blocks. So I'm not going to say never, but if you're, you probably want to be attacking them for like 16 or something if you're choosing not to block this. And if you can do that, like great, but most of the time this is not really how the game goes. I think I'm hoping not to play Calm Veil Volthaven in my Aurora main deck, but if you have to, you can Calm Veil Volthaven Ebbing Arcstride, and that's kind of okay. If they have a really big hand, it's like fine because you're preventing a lot of the damage. But again, I'm just like hoping to not have to play this card.
Yeah, and then they just play like arc shards on you anyways, and you're just like, oh, I took so much damage.
Yeah, that is the danger. Orc shards is the big punish if you don't block. So yeah, in general, just block.
I think so.
And block twos are good. I've boarded in block twos into Ziggy in basically all of the decks, depending on like how many instants you have. If you can like swap out an instant or two for a couple more block twos, even if they're junky cards, it's pretty solid.
Then let's move on to Acilio. So I think the main one, just convert your hands in some way. That's pretty reasonable. Acilio is like the classic wizard. They're gonna do arcane damage to you. So let's say you don't have cards that prevent exactly arcane, then you need to be able to convert your hands. Whether that be activating Aurora's ability to attack with every card in your hand, or maybe banking a embodiment of lightning to be able to create like on one turn cycle use two embodiment of lightnings to have a very very wide turn. Kind of just like anything you need to do to convert every card in your hand.
Yeah, I think if you get stuck IPing cards, the game usually is not one you're going to win, because then it also means that you're likely to, like, you couldn't convert those cards last turn, you might not be able to convert them on the next turn either, and that just really gets out of control. So you need enough of these ways to convert. The go again sources are great for it. Even the I think depending on, like, you don't want to go overkill, but you can start playing some pretty so-so cards if you are replacing like similar, like you can replace like a blue 3 block with like a blue glide through Starlight, which is the pay one, discard this, prevent one damage, and I think that that's like pretty reasonable. Or if you have a Sigil of Astral Flow, the Sigil that makes a lightning flow when it leaves, that's not a card you really want in your deck. But depending, if you have like mostly just blue 3 blocks that don't convert, taking one of them out for a Sigil of Astral Flow is okay. Just be aware they can play some attacks, and especially if it's a high Acilio pod, like 3 or 4 Acilios, they are more likely to be playing attacks. So you can don't overkill it. This is especially true for sealed, but can also be true for draft. Just like don't go like too crazy on the lousy instance. But I think if you want to play a few of these, it's okay.
Yeah, this is probably also a spot where something like yellow Electrolyze is pretty good. Even blue Electrolyze, I've played it once and it was okay. It just helps convert.
Yeah, you just want cards that can do something and that can let you spend your hand. So yeah, just look through your sideboard cards, figure out what you have, and pay attention to your no blocks. You can board in more no blocks against Acilio, but there is some limit where if they start attacking you and you have a million no blocks in your deck, you're gonna have a bad time.
Probably not that big of an issue because you're not going to have that many cards to sideboard in.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
I would say like actively look to set up one or two of those big turns where you have multiple go agains and push through. I think you're trying to win by damage. And if you fatigue them, we kind of talked about this, it's because you make them block. So I think you need to be focusing on offense primarily while also converting your hands.
Okay. Then the last matchup, the Aurora Mirror. I think the number one point that I have to say, this is kind of unfortunate to say, but going second is a huge advantage in the Aurora Mirror. But if you want to flip this, you're kind of basing it off of who has more of the sanctuary equipments that can prevent the Scorpio damage. And I feel like if you have like 2 or 3 more sanctuary equipments than your opponent, then you are actively favored in the matchup.
Yeah, I think the sanctuary equipments are really big for Scorpio, and yeah, I agree with all of that. Going second is big. I think in general, I feel like first and second is somewhat close in this format, but I think the Aurora Mirror in particular feels like going second is very good.
Yeah, it's like unfortunately, like you have to convert your hand attack, which means your opponent gets to block and then convert their hand perfectly, and you just do that back and forth, and that means that in Flesh and Blood, if you go second, you have tempo, and as long as you don't lose your tempo, you typically win. And I think the only way to flip that is to have like 6 more life than your opponent, which comes from the sanctuary equipments.
Yeah, I don't know if it's quite 6, but I found it to usually be around like 3 or 4.
I think it's more than that. You get to stop 3 Scorpio attacks, like, it's pretty big.
Oh, I'm saying like the break point between first and second is usually around 3 or 4 points, I think.
Oh yeah, but that's what I'm saying. If you go first and you have 3 sanctuary opponents over your opponent, you're probably ahead, right? Like you're getting 3 points ahead of your opponent. If your opponent has like 3 seekers equipment and you have 3 sanctuary equipments, you're probably ahead. Like if you go second and have 3 sanctuary opponents, I don't know what your opponent can do.
Yeah, yeah, I do agree. Outside of that, I think on hits are great, especially breakpoints and arcane damage. Your destructive fleetfoots, Russia power, singeing flow stride, the ones we talked about, all very good. Blocking is good in the mirror, but those breakpoints are just always a pain and either eat equipment, which is Scorpio swings later, or yeah, it just kind of all adds up. So the more you can tax that equipment faster, the sooner Scorpio is online, I guess is how I would think about it.
I think when you are gonna be preventing one with your sanctuary opponent equipment, just keep in mind that is this better than 2 points because you can always prevent Scorpio later, and sometimes just preventing Scorpio might be worth more than preventing 1 damage and like something else that unhit creates. Like, for example, like a yellow Mercurial Skies or something. Like, do you really care about this Mercurial Skies popping off? Or do you care about the Scorpio attacks later? Like, think about that, right? Like that might just be like a trade-off that you might need to think about.
And another thing that I feel comes up in mirrors sometimes is this kind of like, can you afford to sit there and play the flow denial game? And I think this is going to depend on how many flows they have, how much equipment you have, and how many flows you have. But I think that if you can afford to do this, where you just like basically just like, I'm going to block out all your singeing flow strides and starve you on flows, it is very, very powerful. So just like whenever they have an on hit flow effect that you can potentially deny, think about if that is something that you're able to deny while still, but while not like completely hampering your own. Like if you can deny it, but then you don't get to like do your thing and you can't convert your cards, like that isn't worth it. But if you have enough of a surplus of equipment and flows and you can keep them off of flows, I think this is often like, I think I always win those games actually.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a potential win condition.
You know, a good way to prevent people from having flow generation in a potted draft is if you just draft all the singeing flow strides first. Like they don't have singeing flow strides because you have them all, right?
Yeah, that is true. And I guess back to the point of just more flow generation is good. I think it does give you a real advantage in the mirror. And if you just have, I've had a lot of games that like look kind of close, or I'm even like a little down on life, but I have 5 lightning flows and my opponent has none, and it's just like, yeah, this game is actually not close. I have such a huge advantage.
Oh, also another card, Storm Shard. Man, this card's so good.
Yeah. Storm Shard feels incredible in the mirror. I mean, incredible in general, but
Yeah, I played against Yuki in the Aurora mirror on Saturday, I think it was, and
yeah.
I played my second Storm Shard at the very end of the game. And she goes, "You have two," and lost the game on the spot. I'm like, "Yeah, drafted two. Let's go."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
it's
tough to beat.
it's the second one that's really gross. It's the second one. They don't expect the second one. Ugh.
All right. I think, at least for me, that's everything I have to say about Aurora. What about you?
Yeah, we talked for about 2 hours on Aurora.
I think this set just is very complex and has a lot to talk about. So we'll see. Maybe some of the other episodes will be a little bit tighter as we get back into the swing of doing these how to drafts. And we've covered like some of the lightning and generic cards and the equipments. Also, yeah, there's kind of just a lot to talk about in this set.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Ziggy has a lot to talk about too, so it might be 2 hours again.
Yeah. And Decilio too. So, anyways, yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Hope it helps you out with your armory drafts. calling, nationals, whatever it is that you have coming up. I hope that you enjoyed this and found it helpful. If you have questions or want to get in touch with us, you can find us on social media. Jay is at Ueda J on Twitter. I'm at Yuki Lee Bender on Twitter and Blue Sky. You can reach out to us there. You can also find us in our Patreon Discord that is available to all patrons. That's patreon.com/onthebobble. I've been posting a lot of the deck lists that I've been drafting with small write-ups, and some other people have also been posting questions, thoughts about the format, their decks, and so on. So if you're looking for a good resource where there's limited discussion and things like that, I would check that out. But yeah, that's going to be a wrap for us, and we'll see you all next week.
Okay. Yeah. Just unfortunate that we can't get all the draft episodes out before US Nats, right? Because that's this weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, this weekend. US Nats is so early, and maybe even the week one of the other nationals. I guess you'll have two of them out, but one of them won't be out yet.
Yeah, yeah. I'll try and get this out in a day or two. So yeah, this will be out before US Nats. So everyone who's playing US Nats, good luck. Are you
Yeah,
going to
good
it?
luck to you. Yeah, I believe I'm going for the limited calling.
It's a limited calling?
That's the only reason I'm going. I wouldn't be going if it wasn't a limited calling.
It's a sealed deck calling? Oh my god, I would have. Oh, I didn't think this was sealed.
Yeah, it's sealed calling. It's sweet.
I,
That's the
I
whole
would have
reason I'm
so
going.
booked this and when if I knew that was sealed. Oh my god. Well, that's my fault for not checking.
It's okay. Flights were pretty expensive, so
Yeah, right now flights. Yeah, I need to book my Vegas flight too. So,
I think the
okay.
only reason I went was because I had flight credit and it was limited. I think if either of those weren't true, I wouldn't have gone.
Okay, how much was your flight?
I think it was like $700.
No, it's so expensive. The Vegas flights
Yeah,
are coming close to $500. So, I
yeah,
need to book it soon.
yeah. I just had like I forget like $400 flight credit laying around that was going to expire in a bit, and I was just like, I'll just use it.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay,
But I don't know
then
if I would have paid the full 700.
that's fair. That's fair. Okay, then I will cut it off here, and we'll talk to you, or you know, we'll we'll do another one next week.
Yeah. See you all next week. Good luck.
Good night.